the Chai Chat Podcast, solutions for empowered living. Engaging, educating, empowering. Each week, your hosts Tarun Puri, author of Finding the Guru Within, and Steve Harvey, mindset mentor to A-list celebrities and stars, bring a combined expertise of over 6 decades in mentoring, coaching, and inspiring positive solutions to the negatives which keep us stuck and unhappy. With a focus on solutions versus problems, in each episode, they discuss topics relevant to the human condition, which challenge us from moving forward into positive growth and ultimate freedom. Through stream of consciousness, unscripted dialogue and inquiry, they provide practical, deep, and actionable insights to support you in creating and living a happy, successful, fulfilled life. Join us each week and learn how to access your own inner GPS, your guru positioning system, which comes preset with all the solutions you need for empowered living. Living a life of ease versus effort is only a thought away. Let us show you what works and what doesn't.
Hello and welcome to Chai Chat. I am Tarun Puri.
And I'm Steve Harvey.
And today we bring you a most wonderful topic. It's called Rest in Peace, how to take back your sleep. What do you think of that, Steve?
I think it's a great topic for discussion. And, I think that sleep, it's a lot like love. Everyone agrees that, love is wonderful except when it's not. And everyone agrees that sleep is wonderful except when it's not. And when you think about it, human beings, we spend close to 1/3 of our life asleep.
Mm-hmm.
And when we go without sleep, I think it can make you psychotic. It could eventually kill you, indirectly or directly. And so I think it's clear that getting some good quality shut-eye is crucial to the body's ability to function and to be successful in all areas of life.
I can't agree more. And just from a layman's perspective, as I've worked with clients and family and friends and just myself, I've had the observation that over the years, as our world is speeding up more and more, that somehow sleep is a dirty word. It's almost like if you're sleeping or want to sleep more, that somehow you're being a lazy bum and that somehow you're not taking, your career goals seriously, or that you're avoiding. So, I thought, well, instead of having these theories, why don't we just call in the expert? And I am absolutely delighted today that we were able to have Julia Worrall, RN, who has tucked in thousands of people over her extensive career in nursing. And of course, along with that medical training that you get, she also specialized in respiratory health. And those two together, combined with a few interesting experiences, developed into an expertise that she brings to us today in the area of sleep. So as a specialist in how overall health and well-being and sleep are intimately interconnected, she has consulted worldwide with individuals, with organizations, and all those who are seeking solutions to health and sleep issues. Julia has, I think, effectively connected the dots between previously presumed unrelated health and dental issues even, can you believe it, with issues with sleep. I am so looking forward to learning how my dental issues are impacting my sleep and how my sleep is impacting my dental. And along with that, in her spare time, she is the chief editor of the Best Sleep magazine. I'm subscribing. And we're delighted to have her on this Chai Chat podcast today to share her passion, her understanding, and really to have her help you get the quality of sleep you deserve, along with optimum health. So, Julia, come on in and enlighten us, my friend, with sleep.
Well, that was a fantastic introduction. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Hi, Julia. Welcome.
Yeah, we're all almost feeling like we should be calm and, we should be behaving in a way conducive to sleep. It's almost like we're going to get caught if we're too hyper. But, in podcast land, we can't have those pauses right now because it may put people to sleep because they need it so much. So we will fill in the space here. But hopefully at the end of this discussion, I'm really hoping that our listeners will be able to have a more rounded, maybe a 360 view of what is sleep, what isn't sleep, what do we know and not know about it? And we had this discussion off camera. Who owns sleep? I've never asked that question. So when we talked about that, and with my legal background, immediately I think of patents and copyrights, and I hear the word of who owns sleeps in terms of that. But I'll be quiet and can we jump off with that bit of question, and then we want to learn a little bit more about you.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start, because so many people, when they're starting to struggle with sleep, they think, okay, who do I go to? Who do I talk to about this problem? And there are so many people out there calling themselves sleep experts, right? So you have some organizations that are strongly mental health focused when it comes to sleep. So talking about what's preventing you, what thoughts are racing through your mind, what is the emotional state that's preventing you from getting into sleep? And those strategies are very effective for many people, but not all. And then you have the whole respiratory pathway, right? Are you snoring? Do you have sleep apnea? Do you have asthma? Or are you able to breathe through your nose? And those strategies are effective for many people, but not all. And so then you think, well, exercise physiology. If you exercise and you move your body and you increase the flow of CSF, you're going to sleep better. So then people start to exercise and then still can't get to sleep at night. There's so many variables. What are you eating? Are you having too many things that are congesting you? And, food sensitivities that are preventing you from sleeping? Everybody has a piece of the puzzle, but for the person who is still struggling to sleep, it can be very frustrating to know, where do I start? And I've come to this belief that it's because we are looking at sleep the way we've done with the rest of the body. We have taken the body and divided it, right, into different specialties and sections. So if I have palpitations, I'm going to go to a cardiologist, right? But what happens if the cardiologist does an echo and ECG, says your heart's fine, and you go on and you still have palpitations? Well, then you kind of feel like you're losing your mind, because you've been told it's fine, but you don't feel fine. And there's a part of you that tells you there's something that's not quite right. And so that's where I think people are really struggling. And we fall into the trap of what providers are used to doing, which is giving a medication and saying, you know what, you can't sleep. Let me give you a medication that's going to shut your eyes for you. So I'm going to make your eyes shut for 8 hours. And you will wake up and you will think that you have effectively slept, but yet you still feel exhausted. So did you sleep? Because people think that just by closing their eyes for a period of time, that they are achieving sleep, because they're not understanding the physiology of sleep, right? So it's like, if I put food in front of you on the plate, on the table, that doesn't mean that you digested the food, and it doesn't mean that you can eliminate that. So just because somebody's eyes are closed does not mean that they are effectively and actually sleeping. And I know that because as a nurse, I have used many chemicals to put people into various states of sleep or unconsciousness. And I know that we can manipulate that, right? So that's what a lot of these drugs are doing. And so people are still not feeling like they've enjoyed a satisfying, pleasurable night's sleep. And that's where the desperation comes for a lot of people. We need to look at sleep as a sleep-wake cycle. So you can't talk about sleep if you're not addressing the wake, the sleep-wake cycle. And then even during sleep, there are sleep-wake cycles within your sleep. There's the deep sleep, and then the REM is a wakeful part. So are you getting both? So there's a lot that goes on with sleep, not to overcomplicate it for people. Once you get the rhythm of what's happening, then you can work in harmony with the rhythm and flow of your body to be able to enjoy optimal sleep.
Wow, that is so fascinating to kind of pull back the lens, if you will, and see the forest for the trees is what I'm hearing here. And I'm just so curious, though, that I know that, like we were talking in your introduction, that so you have the RN background. You literally told us you had tucked in thousands of people, and in order to give them a good, comfortable sleep. So obviously, who's more qualified? And that really made me think. I said, "Oh my gosh, that's amazing!" And then on top of that, the interest in respiratory functions. But was there a specific incident, or was it over time that kind of tweaked you or brought you more laser focused into the actual mechanism of sleep?
Yeah, I think I spent my career in critical care, so I was really proud, of the knowledge that I've accumulated to be able to help save people's lives. And you get the sickest of the sick, and you're tweaking little things here and there. It's really a privilege to be able to help somebody come back from the brink, But personally, and my colleagues, we, from working night shifts, from having that heavy responsibility, from working 12-hour shifts, from having children we went home to and then had to do that, we were burning out and exhausted. And it was a culture. Like, we would start our shift, and it's even more so now. We'd start our shift saying, oh, I only got 2 hours of sleep last night. Oh, well, you're lucky you got 2. I only got 1. Like, we'd all be comparing how little sleep that we got. And for somebody to come in and say, I had a great sleep, I slept 10 hours. Man, you just were like shooting daggers at them, right? Like, you call yourself a nurse.
How weak that you need all that sleep, right?
But over time, what you start to see is it takes its toll. And I was really struggling with a combination of huge fatigue, which whenever I went and complained to the doctor about fatigue, they said, you must be depressed. And I didn't consciously feel depressed, but that's what they say, your blood work's fine, therefore you must be depressed. Go talk to somebody. So I just knew that wasn't kind of the thing for me. And I also struggled with migraines, terrible migraines through the years that were getting more and more intractable. And so I started doing some research, and my doctor had said, why don't you go get a sleep test? And when I put off getting that sleep test, I'm going to tell you, because in my mind, the media and how sleep apnea is presented is that it's older, middle-aged men, slightly overweight, truck drivers. I had an image in my mind of what sleep apnea looked like. And so when he told me that, what I heard was, he thinks you're overweight, you should be losing weight. I heard it as a negative thing. And that was my tired brain, by the way, receiving that message in that place, right? So I put off getting that sleep test for 10 years.
Wow.
And I've come to find out that's not unusual. Okay. Out of 10 times the doctor will order a sleep test, 4 only will go and get it.
That's mind-blowing. I mean, people religiously do physicals, but
no, because there's a story that we tell ourselves, right? Okay. No, I'm overwhelmed. My husband doesn't help me enough at home. My kids don't help me. I know I should be going to the gym, and I'm not. If I did, I'd have more energy. So you tell yourself this whole story of why you deserve to be tired and why you deserve to be suffering. Okay. So it took me until I started reading about cardiovascular issues. I started having palpitations. I was diagnosed with an irregular heart rhythm. And when I started looking into the correlation between heart disease and sleep apnea, I thought maybe I should go get it checked out, right? So I go for my test. I can't even stay awake long enough for them to, I said, I have to go to sleep right now. I'm exhausted. Bam, I go to sleep. I wake up in the morning and I think, I've had the best sleep of my life. Like, normally I have kids coming in, waking me up all night, right? Like, this was going to a resort, best sleep ever. So then the doctor comes in to discuss the results with me. And it turns out when they subtracted the amount of times that my brain was awake, that I didn't even realize, okay? He said, your heart through the night was like you were running up and down the stairs, running up, bam, it would come down, up, come down. And you would stop breathing for sometimes up to almost 2 minutes. You would stop breathing, your oxygen would come down. So all of those, what we call arousals, flood your body with adrenaline, cortisol, stress hormones, make you insulin resistant, make it impossible for you to lose weight, and put you in fight or flight all night. So your blood pressure starts to go up. And there is no possible way that you can be healthy with all the choices you're making during the daytime if every time you go to sleep at night, this process is sabotaging you, all your efforts. So when they subtracted all those out, it turned out that in 7 hours, I only actually slept 20 minutes.
What?
20 minutes.
I mean, I'm not a betting man, but if we all had a competition and we all said, okay, whoever gets closest or, wins a prize or something, I would have never said 20 minutes. Like, that's just shocking.
But Tarun, I was only diagnosed with moderate sleep apnea. Do you know how many people are way worse than that? And when your oxygen starts to drop because you stop breathing, and you get below 90%, you start to lose brain cells, right? You have tissue death. So your cells start to die. They're your telomeres, which predict how long you will live. They shorten, right? And there are people who, if we were observing that during the daytime in a hospital setting, we would intubate them. But it's happening in the privacy of your own home with your spouse beside you, who keeps elbowing you to wake up, roll over, turn over, something like that. And it happens to people all the time. And they are resistant to follow through on that because of whatever their perception is about, I don't want to wear the machine. I don't think I have a problem if my wife would just stop nagging me about snoring, or the spouse will go into a different room as if that solves the problem. But meanwhile, this alarm system, this beautiful alarm system that your body created with the snore getting louder and louder and louder to let people know around you, I'm struggling, I can't breathe, help me. Instead, we get irritated and we shut them out into an area all by themselves. And working in the emergency department, I can't tell you how many times those calls we get between midnight and 6 o'clock in the morning, your heart sinks because you know it's going to be bad. And it's the wife went in because the husband was actually quiet and finds him gone. That's a nightmare when it could have been something as simple as getting a test, putting some air and helping you to breathe, or correcting the orofacial complex that is causing the problem in the first place. People don't know that there are fairly simple solutions out there for them.
That's mind-blowing. I've never thought of snoring as actually an alarm system calling for help. Like if your smoke alarm started to go off in the evening or night, you'd be up and trying to figure out what's happening and where is it coming from, right? Mm-hmm. Not taking it and throwing it into the closet and hoping it, right? So that is... Wow, I've just learned so much already here, hey, Steve?
Yeah.
Okay, we're done.
So, Julia, I have a background in my first career was in dental technology. So I'm really interested to speak a little bit about, the structure of the facial structure and the role of how it affects breathing and the quality of sleep. And, is there something that, people can look at themselves and say, based on the structure of my face, I may be more susceptible to having sleep problems. Therefore, I can be proactive and do something about it before the problem shows up.
Absolutely. 100%. In fact, most of the times when I'm lecturing or teaching a course, I tell the participants to bring a mirror with them. Bring a mirror. Or get your cell phone out and we're going to do a self-evaluation, because there are simple things we can see. Something, for example, of you would know a class 2 presentation. So where your jaw is actually back, it's back too far. So you might see people have, we used to call it buck teeth, or an overjet, where your teeth kind of come more forward on top than they do on the bottom. As that jaw comes back, you have to think about the structures that are attached to that jaw, which is your huge tongue. People are really surprised to see how big the tongue is. More than just this part you see in the front, it's the big, huge muscle that goes down the back of your throat. So as that jaw comes back, it's compressing against the back of your throat. And the reason why I had so many issues that I had was because I was a class 3, which meant my jaw came forward. And back in the day, they thought the solution was to push that jaw back. So I had surgery, they broke my jaw, they pushed it back. And when they did that, they pushed my tongue right up against the back of my throat. So unless I want to have surgery to bring all of that forward again, I'll probably wear a CPAP for the rest of my life because they removed bone, right? But if you're somebody who's in that in between place. There are so many things they can do now with what they call functional appliances, palatal expanders, to open up, to make space for the tongue, not just to fit in your mouth, but it should fit up into the roof of your mouth. And that's the other issue a lot of people have, is their tongue sits low, the muscle gets floppy for many reasons. It could be that you were bottle fed instead of breastfed. You used a pacifier for longer than you should have. Maybe you used a sippy cup for a long time. You sucked your thumb, right?
Yeah.
All of those things change the way you use your muscles. So you're using muscles in the front of your face instead of in the back of your throat, which actually would help to strengthen tone. And that tongue motion of breastfeeding, or actually just an effective swallow, actually is what helps to guide the growth of your face moving forward. And when that tongue sits low and doesn't do its job, then what you see is what we call a retreated maxilla, because this part of your face doesn't grow forward enough. And when that happens, then you also end up with smaller sinuses, a deviated septum, stuffy nose all the time. You can't breathe through your nose. And the more you can't breathe through your nose, the more you breathe through your mouth, the more your tongue posture changes, and the worse it gets over time. So
That's me.
yeah,
That's me.
and how it becomes manifest is you start to see the kids' teeth are all coming in crooked and crowded and compressed. And so a well-meaning orthodontist will come along and say, let me make your child's face look pretty. I'll pull out these teeth. I'll throw on some
bicuspids.
And we'll make the teeth look real pretty. But it's not about the teeth. It's not about the teeth. I had expansion done, and the expansion was great. I opened up and made space. I could feel myself breathing better. I had more room for my tongue. And the beautiful dentist wanted to make sure my teeth looked beautiful at the end of it, so wanted to put braces on. But the minute they put the braces on and the elastics and all those things, I couldn't tolerate it. And I was like, listen, I don't care about the teeth looking straight. I want room for my tongue. I want good cranial motion. I want all the bones in my skull to be moving effectively, clearing fluid. So I don't care if I have a space or two here or there. But we've gone so much into this idealized beauty that we fixate on the teeth, and these parents are paying and signing over their children to a lifetime of chronic pain, weight struggles, mental and emotional issues, because they just want their teeth to look pretty. So that's where we have a lot of work to kind of change people's mindset about what is beauty, because health, when somebody is healthy, then they radiate beauty. When you try to force it, you actually change the genetic potential of that person, and it never quite looks the same as nature would have intended it to look, right? Yeah.
That is mind-blowing again. You have tied together so many areas, truly, when you're talking about optimum health and well-being and dental. I mean, I couldn't have imagined that there were that many subtleties involved that contribute to this whole mechanism, right, that we call. And I just thought sleep was about, what the easy way is, right, Julia? Why all this complication? Why don't we just pop a pill?
There's a pill for every ill. Yeah.
Right?
But so the number one thing I have people reaching out for me to help them with is to get off the pills. Okay. That's the hardest thing. And think about the pills that we're giving. We're giving sedatives, benzodiazepines, which are amnesiacs, which mean we use those in procedures where we're going to create pain and we don't want you to remember. We're going to do something very uncomfortable and we don't want you to remember. So we'll give you something that actually disassociates that memory in your mind, right? So then we wonder why there's all sorts of people that are having memory issues and dementia, but they've been on these pills for a lifetime to try to sleep. Or we give a hypnotic, or we give an antipsychotic. And all of these pills that we give force the eyes closed, but prevent that person from getting into REM. And so if they can't get into REM, the brain cannot clean itself. So we're creating this neurological constipation for people. And they wake up each day and they cannot function because they're so full. They just can't release. And we're damaging their brains over time.
I love that.
Wow.
Neurological constipation.
Me too. I like you. You got to trademark that because because the visual is very compelling. And so basically, what you're telling me is people are getting knocked unconscious or knocked out, but really, rather than healing or receiving the rest. See, we tend to think. I've always thought, well, I'm sleeping, therefore I'm resting. But you're telling me not necessarily. So speak to that a bit. Like,
So
it's
it's called sleep architecture.
okay.
So think about if you go to the hospital for chest pain, they put these leads on you, and then you get a little squiggle, right? The PQRST. And we know what that should look like if it's healthy, normal sinus rhythm for each person. Now, if you come in and that QRS, that pointy part is wide, oh, we're getting the crash cart, we're pulling it over, we get oxygen on it, because we know what that means and what that's going to do to you, the potential for your heart to stop, for example, okay? Our whole body is like that. So when we look at sleep and we measure what's happening in the brain during sleep, we expect to see a very predictable model. So the first 4 hours of your night should be you going from stage 1, just getting ready for sleep, feeling kind of warm and fuzzy, right? Then stage 2, where you start to lower your blood pressure, lower your heart rate, temperature starts to go down. You're kind of cutting off. You could kind of hear what's going on around you, but you really just don't care. Stage 3, now all of a sudden you disengage. You're not going to hear what's going on. You're actually in a deeper state of sleep. You've got slow brain waves, more synchronized brain waves going through, okay? And in that deep part of sleep is where your body heals, muscles, tissue, growth hormone is released. That's where it goes about fixing your body from the day. And so you have multiple periods of that within the first 4 hours. About 90 minutes in, you'll get a little period of REM, but it's not much, okay? Not much. But the last 4 hours of your sleep, you get very little deep sleep. And now the body focuses its attention on healing your brain. So that's where you start to get the majority of your REM sleep. And what happens between the deep sleep and the REM is it's not a gradual descent into it like stage 1, 2, 3. It is a switch that occurs. It's called the flipflop switch in neurology. So it either turns on and turns off, or it doesn't. The sleeping pills people take prevent you from turning on, okay? And when you're in that deep sleep with the slow oscillating waves, the cells are actually filling up with fluids and neurological waste, etc. And then when you switch to REM, all of a sudden now the brain waves get very active. That's when you're dreaming and there's all this stuff going on in your brain, but your body is now paralyzed. And it's what we call the brain drain, because as the brain cells become activated, now all that fluid leaves the cells and is eliminated. So I do call this my neurodigestive theory, okay? That everything you've taken in through the day, the brain has to file away, consolidate the memory, or prune it and get rid of it so that you can start the next day fresh. And if you're not going through all these processes, then you wake up in the morning, dragging yourself out of bed, telling yourself, you know what, get up, you got to go to that meeting, but maybe you can have a nap later on. Like you just don't have the energy because you're carrying this leftover stuff, this sludge in your brain that then we start talking about these conglomerates of tau proteins and amyloid plaques and all of these things that are stuck in our brain that become dementia down the road. There are studies that showed when they measured the markers in 12 and 13-year-olds, they already saw the Alzheimer's markers in these children that were sleeping very poorly. But when they treated the sleep and then they retested them, those markers were gone. So we know that 10, 20, 30 years before you ever have the signs of Alzheimer's and dementia, you're already causing and the damage is being created by that insomnia, the chronic insomnia, the shift work disorders, all of these things that are impacting your sleep. To me, I think we should be screaming a lot, getting a lot more attention for preventive than spending billions of dollars on a drug for a disease that nobody has been able to create a drug for. Let's be preventative and help people's brains to do the job that they're designed to do. And I know I got off of the topic of the question that you asked me, my little tirade, but that's the frustrating thing. And so the other part of this switch that occurs is that switch is it requires acetylcholine for that switch to work. And the precursor for acetylcholine is vitamin D. So if we talk about vitamin D deficiencies and the effect that it has on our sleep, what we're really talking about is a sunshine deficiency, because our body is dependent on the sun to set our circadian rhythms, right? To help us sleep. We need the sun to come in our eyes at a certain angle. So certain times of the year, we actually absorb more vitamin D than other times. We have photoreceptors on our skin where we metabolize vitamin D. But most of us, since the invention of the light bulb, have actually not worked in harmony with the rising and setting of the sun. We've actually gone indoors with artificial lighting and started a 24-hour work cycle where we're totally acting as if all of these things that existed and served us well for thousands and thousands of years, all of a sudden, we think we can change our physiology to make us more successful in business and you know what I'm saying, right?
Oh yeah, you're talking to the entrepreneurs in the room here. I'm just saying, right, that somehow because I can light and see that way I can work longer and more, and I don't have to go to sleep when all of nature sleeps. I mean, that's for the animals and birds and trees, but I'm special, right? Like I have different laws and I can kind of fool with those, is what I'm hearing here. So talk a little bit about that cycle. It's everywhere.
But the success that we feel we've achieved in these last 100 years has come at what cost? Look around you. At what cost? So to trace back, when did our sleeping issues start? There's a lot of data that points to the invention of the light bulb as that, right? Yeah. So that has been huge. And then all the different light forms that we've had. So we then, in our effort to be successful and achieve the American dream, have felt like it's okay for us to steal away from our sleep time and use that time to be more productive, to make more money, to prove that we're driven and that we deserve to have success. So you have people proudly exclaiming that they sleep 4 or 5 hours a night. Yeah. But remember, I just shared with you what happens first 4 hours, the last 4 hours. Yeah. So first 4 hours, you're going to have body repair. So physically, you will be able to get up and do, but the last 4 hours is mental, emotional regulation, our stability, our resiliency. So you'll be doing, but you won't be being. Like you will be snapping at your loved ones, your relationships will decline. You yourself will become hardened, on edge, depressed, anxious. Like the sacrifice that we're making to lose those hours of sleep is too great in the big scheme of things for our partners, our families, our society, and the world at large that we're seeing today. People think, I don't want to get into political things, but people think they have a belief about something and that's why they feel so strongly. But in many of these cases, they feel that strongly because they are missing out on a good chunk of their emotional regulation that's supposed to be happening here every night.
Yeah, it sounds to me, Julia, you're talking about how you might have a background in Ayurveda, and we talk about living life in balance with nature's rhythms. And you also spoke about digestion, the neurodigestive connection there. And Ayurveda talks about, we are not, people say we are what we eat, but Ayurveda said we are what we digest. And digestion is really the ability to take in energy and information and eliminate that which you don't need, which you were referring to there. but also living in balance with nature's rhythms. And Tarun and I were discussing this last night about how we've gotten away from living in harmony with nature. You know, years ago, people were up and at work, you know, before 6 o'clock. Mm-hmm. They'd eat their large meal at lunchtime and they'd be in bed by 10 o'clock at night. Mm-hmm. But because of the invention of light bulbs, but also of the internet and the digital world, where people are working in different time zones, and instead of being in bed at 10 o'clock at night, they're actually, that's a midday, because they're having to, you know, if it's a broker, for example, that's doing trades from London and New York and Tokyo and whatever, and they have to be awake all these different hours. And so, yeah, maybe they're making, you know, lots of money in the process, but as you said, at what cost?
At what cost? And
yeah.
And you brought up a good point about when we're talking about this whole neurodigestive concept, you've got to look at the gut. You produce all the neurotransmitters in your gut. So if you're not eliminating, you won't have the neurotransmitters that help you to get to sleep. One night's sleep, missing one night of sleep, destroys your microbiome in your gut. So you're already going to be at a disadvantage. Now, however, what you get from that one night without sleep is you get a surge of dopamine. So you'll find there are people who are very creative, very intelligent. A lot of the inventors, a lot of these ones, they said they did their best work when they weren't sleeping. They had chronic insomnia, right? So they would be very creative. Some of these writers, they make their songs and one night of sleep, fine. But that surge of dopamine actually competes with melatonin receptors. They fight for the same receptors. So that excess dopamine now creates less receptors and suppresses melatonin. So what I found as a nurse is that when I switched to night shifts, the first night I came home, I was dragging. The second night, I felt a little bit better. Third night, I was like all night long, you go have a nap, I'll cover your people. Like, you go, I'm good. And I went almost by the fourth night, almost into a manic state. And then I knew when I came off of those night shifts, I wouldn't be able to sleep for 2 weeks. Like, I just knew you get into these cycles. So what people don't understand is that there are these neurochemical reactions that take place that you cannot talk yourself out of when you're in those states. I mean, we've had people come to the emergency department. They didn't sleep 4 or 5 days. They are psychotic.
Yeah.
We can't talk to them. Only thing you can do at that state is give them something to shut them down, make them sleep, and then try to work with them, right? But you have people who spend their entire lives in that low level, chronic sleep insufficiency, psychotic state. And yet we say, we applaud them for these driven type A personalities. They're hard to deal with. They're hard, but they're being successful. But inevitably, the body can only tolerate that for so long, and it will shut it down. So you'll be successful and someone else will reap the benefits of your sacrifice.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. We talk about that in that manage energy, not your stress, right? That's the same resonance here. Yeah. Go ahead, Steve.
So I'm going to say, it almost seems it's become more important to talk about who you're sleeping with versus your quality of sleep.
And now, did I tell you the rating of this program, Steve? It's called clean. I'm just letting you guys know before you answer that, Julia.
Well, clearly it's an issue because a lot of the new constructions and homes are making double master suites. There's this whole concept of the sleep divorce, right? Yeah. So they recommend if you want to stay with your partner, you need to sleep in separate rooms. And so this division of, rather than getting to the root of the problem. So I talk about the primary sleep disorder, which is whoever is not sleeping, right? The secondary or secondhand sleep disorder is the partner of that person. Yeah. Because let's say you have a husband who's snoring. He's going to end up with cardiovascular problems, right? The wife beside him, her brain, we talk about everything shutting down and we're sleeping, but there's still always a part of your brain and your consciousness that is aware and is constantly scanning the room every 40 seconds, right? So that person who's sleeping beside her loved one, the brain is noticing, hey, he stopped breathing, wakes her up. She wakes up, realizes, nudges him to roll over, that she tries to settle back to sleep. So both of them are having these arousals, are having these surges of adrenaline and cortisol, but she will tend to get the depression, the insulin resistance, the diabetes, right? She will tend to get the metabolic changes. So now you have two people who are unhealthy. How do they interact with their children? So now we're talking about third-hand sleep disorders, because the byproduct of this are exhausted, unhealthy parents with very little reserves trying to manage children who likely have terrible sleep as well. You can notice when the mom is pregnant and you do an ultrasound, you can see at 12 weeks a difference in the flow of that child and already identify that they're going to have issues. And then when they're born, if we don't support that, some children are on CPAP or have breathing issues from day one, and we call it SIDS, right? So sleep apnea in children is SIDS. And what's interesting, side note, 92% of children who died of SIDS had lip ties, tongue ties, so restrictions, right? So you have these children that are growing up in an age where we don't respect sleep the same way. I can't tell you how many parents I say about their 2 or 3-year-old, oh, they won't nap. They won't nap. Oh, they don't go to sleep. They stay up all night, right? That's a combination of the child is exhausted, and when they are overtired, they respond by becoming hyper. They act out, they lose their mind. Normally, we would say that kid needs a nap, right? The more hyper they get, that kid needs to sleep. We know that, but you're dealing with exhausted parents who can't deal with it, right? So instead, they're like, stick a screen on, give them an iPad, let them go and do anything because at least they're quiet. And that child now looking at the screen and the bright colors is getting these surges of dopamine. And actually for the child, we would think it would be stimulating, but it's actually flooding them, calming them, and they become addicted to it. Now you take them to school, you want to get them to learn book smarts with a pen and paper like we used to, and all of a sudden the kid can't function. Oh, you know what? They're ADHD. So let's put them on medication. And what's the medication we give them? It's a stimulant. And why do they need that stimulant? Because they are exhausted and they cannot function. So 85% of kids out there that are diagnosed as ADHD have just terrible sleep. They're not getting enough sleep, and the quality of the sleep is not healthy. And yet we're medicating them. And then they age out and they become a teenager. And what we start to see are high-risk behaviors, much more likely to try drugs, to smoke, to, be impulsive, to get into trouble. The frontal lobe starts to just really narrow in. And then we start to see juvenile detention halls filling up because nobody knows what to do with these kids. So we start this whole cycle of dysfunction in society that people can't pinpoint. And there is no aspect of our life. Think of any aspect of our life that does not depend on you having a good night's sleep. You can't. Yeah. You think about weight. Okay, people are overweight. Lose weight. Go to the gym. I don't have the energy. I didn't sleep. I'm exhausted. I don't have the energy to go to the gym. Okay. I didn't sleep last night. My brain is driving me. Do we not understand our brain drives us, right? Gives us direction, instruction. When you didn't get enough sleep, the brain says, I need more energy than what I got. So it's going to drive you towards high calorie, high fat foods. And you're going to eat way more calories than you should. And in that moment, you think you're making a choice to pick up that bag of chips and to sit there and just mow down, or popcorn or whatever it is that's your snack of choice. But it's your brain that's driving you saying, hey, I didn't finish what I needed to do last night. I need some action to happen. I need you to be chewing, to masticate so that I can clear the brain of all this cortisol and stress and try to regain some energy. The hormones, leptin and ghrelin that make you feel full or create hunger, they totally flip. So you see these folks that are hundreds of pounds and you think, man, I can't believe that. Well, are they making the choice? Or is the choice being made for them because we haven't addressed the root cause that they can't sleep? And inevitably, in these folks that are hugely obese, when you look at it, there's some form of trauma in their life that is unresolved, that the brain's struggling to deal with, but cannot. They don't sleep well. The brain doesn't get to deal with it. So we go full circle back around to who owns sleep. You have to deal with trauma. But you have to deal with the physiology. At the end of the day, the only person that owns sleep is you. You are the person that owns your sleep. And if you are not getting enough sleep, if you don't wake up full of energy and joyful about your day, who told you that you had to suffer with that? Who told you that that was okay and that's good enough for you? Speak up. But the problem is, even if people speak up, the providers that you're speaking to have had less than 3 hours of education on sleep in their entire career.
Yeah. It's like nutrition.
Yeah.
It's almost become, a medal of honor for people. Look how successful I am, but, and I only sleep 2 hours a night. It's almost like there has to be a shift on the way we perceive that. And also you said at the beginning about not taking this mechanistic view of the body and mind-body health, but realizing that sleep is integral to every aspect of our life. And until we join those dots and make that connection, I think it's very hard for people to really value the importance of sleep.
Mm-hmm. I think you're right. And I think where we see that demonstrated is with military and law enforcement, where they are expected to kind of be above their own physiology. So I've seen it working in the industry where, the person's supposed to go home. They've already worked 16 hours, but there's an incident. You don't go anywhere until all that paperwork's done, until everything is resolved. And so sleep it's almost considered like you should be tougher than that. Like we would never say to somebody that we're working with that has to go to the bathroom and is like, doing the potty dance or something. I gotta go. Come on, suck it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I haven't gone in 12 hours. What's wrong with you? Like, we wouldn't do that because we know it's physiological, but somehow there are many industries that we do that to people when it comes to sleep. And what we're seeing as a result of that is huge increases in suicidality.
It's
we keep complaining about these numbers and we say it's so sad, but what are we doing about it to address it?
I think it's even prevalent in the medical industry, with young doctors when they're starting to do their internship and stuff, and you read about the number of hours that they've had to work around the clock without any sleep. And this again is supposed to be the mindset as well from the older doctors is that's how I did it. That's how it was done in my day. Therefore, you should suck it up and do the same without realizing, what is the effect that's having on their quality to be a doctor, to recognize, a sign that shows up that, this needs to be addressed. They could very well miss that because they're not alert. Can you speak a little bit about the quality of sleep versus the length of sleep? Because a lot of people are quite hung up on that, I think, about the length of sleep that one needs to have.
And so the length of sleep that you need changes all throughout your ages and stages of development, right? So we know that off the bat. But let's say for the adult, I always ask, what's more important, quality of your sleep or the quantity of your sleep? There's research projects out there right now. Military is looking for a way to get the effective 8 hours sleep crammed into 4 to 6 hours. Again, we cannot ignore our physiology, right? So the first 4 hours of sleep are body repair. The second 4 hours is brain repair. So you decide, what do you want? Do you want to have the 8 hours of full physical and mental restoration? Or are you going to sacrifice some of that mental restoration because you won't necessarily pay the price for it now, but you'll regret it when you start to lose your mind down the road, right? So length of time, and then there are people who say, well, how much sleep do you need? Well, you need as much as you need. If you wake up and you feel strong and healthy and you can get by on 6 hours and you function great, fine, right? Nobody's going to say you have to stay in bed for 2 more hours. But I bet many of those people have the desire to have a siesta, to have a little nap at some point during the day. And that's fine too. If you look at how people slept before in the 1800s and before, there is some evidence that they almost had like a biphasic sleep, right? They got up really early, crack of dawn, they did their chores, whatever. They had a heavy meal in the afternoon. Then they had a siesta. Yeah, and then they did their evening activities and right? Mm-hmm. Yes. So if you're having, if it adds up to the total amount of sleep that you need, if you are sleep deprived, there's some research that shows that you are much more likely to get into REM quicker. So it's almost like your body knows it needs to catch up. Interestingly enough, when you start to replace your vitamin D and get your vitamin D levels up to where they should be, during that time, you have a profound need.
Oh, looks like the feed just got stuck for a moment there. And
to sleep.
Right. Okay, there we go.
So it goes back and it does the repairs that it missed out on. So for some people who've had years of bad sleep, you might need a few months to allow your body to catch up. So, we're going to stay with the gold standard. There's always going to be outliers outside of the 8 hours of sleep, but roughly that's what people need. And there are people that have this strange ability to not feel fatigued, like really unique. There's a small subsection of society that doesn't feel fatigued, even losing sleep. There's always going to be outliers, but for the majority of people, that's what we're aiming for. And if you look at that sleep architecture that we talked about, let's take a child, okay? A toddler or an infant. Their rhythm looks entirely different. So their brain is just learning like crazy, absorbing and learning. And so they take in, sleep, consolidate that, wake up, ready to learn more. Learn, right? Sleep. But as we get older, that starts to change because as we're older, we're not learning as rapidly, so we have our sleep wake time stretches out. So it is variable through the years. Ultimately, the test of whether you're getting enough sleep is how well do you function during the day, mentally and physically, right? So that's the test of it. And with all the people we see today, my concern is the overuse of antibiotics, destroying the gut biome. We're not able to produce the serotonin and all the wonderful neurotransmitters that we need for sleep. And we've given these to children for everything, earaches, sore throats, or everything that ailed them, we gave it to them. And now we have a generation of kids that the suicide rates are crazy, totally anxious, depressed. And to go back and to repair that, we need to start looking at our young people and supporting their sleep. And there are some initiatives for that, making school start a little bit later, those kinds of things. But yeah, for the next generation, we need to pay a lot more attention to sleep.
There's such a huge biochemistry. I mean, you name the area of medicine, it seems to all be interrelated. And I remember when we were talking before we went on air that you were explaining with the stressful lives that we have, why we have cravings, and with the cortisol levels. You were giving kind of an interesting example.
So think about, people can relate to when you feel overwhelmed with emotion, what can happen? You start to cry, right?
Yes.
You start to cry, your nose runs, the chemical, if you were to test those tears, the tears for joy, the tears for anger, frustration, they're all neurochemically different. Okay. Yeah. So when we have an excess in the brain tries to rid it. So when we have an excess of cortisol and different stress hormones, noradrenaline, all these different stress hormones, ideally we get a good night's sleep. We say, you know what? I can't deal with this right now. I'm going to go sleep on it. Right. I'm going to have it and I'll talk to you in the morning about how I feel about this. Right. So we intuitively know that if we go to sleep, our brain will do the majority of the work to cope and deal with those emotions. But if we're not able to sleep, we stay up ruminating about it all night, we tend then to want to, during the daytime, eat crunchy things. Maybe we chew on our nails, we chew gum. I see people all the time with the little sunflower seeds, just constant oral fixation of things, right? Because as we chew and as these muscles chew and the jaw is working, and the tongue is going up on the roof of the mouth, we are actually helping the brain to eliminate those hormones. So another way that we can do that, which is again, back to who owns sleep, when you're journaling, when you take them from the brain to the hand and you're writing on paper how you feel and you're getting it all out, you have to get it out somehow. your brain will eliminate it somehow. It's just, it will either be physiological or it will be pathological, right? So you get these overeaters, emotional eaters. When I'm stressed, I eat everything in sight. Why? Why? How does that even make sense that you would do that? Well, because of this complex here, that is actually what facilitates the motion and movement in the brain of fluids that helps to clear out the neurological wastes that have been sitting there. And when we talk about digestion, we're not just talking food. It's even what we watch. How many people do you know they Netflix binge, right? Sit there and veg out just because that is a form of digestion too, that now our brain has to deal with that. The music we listen to will affect the brain waves, the oscillation of how our brain is functioning. So I saw time and again, young people brought into our bubble rooms, seclusion rooms, and they are in there singing heavy metal, death metal, like there's an aggression to what they're putting into their mind, and the brain can't handle it. It's not natural. It's not in harmony with pure energetic flow through our brain. So the brain has to deal with that. And when it gets too many things to deal with, you have a breakdown. It's a simple
the overload. I have a question kind of coming from a different area just because of one of my passions, and I'm just wondering if you have played with that or studied it, because as you're talking about the placement of the tongue and the roof of the mouth and the working of these muscles, that's been my training as a vocalist. Okay, so does singing and positioning and when we're working with sound, we use the roof and we actually move the sound, and we have to actually shape the whole structure in a way for the sound to come out. So I've just kind of went, that's really interesting that whether people have looked at that.
It's funny how you intuitively know that, right? And singing is a huge benefit to people. It helps to stimulate the vagus nerve, which helps to regulate your blood pressure, your heart rate, right? When you're singing, you're controlling your breath. You're controlling your exhale. You are controlling that, which automatically puts you into that rest and digest autonomic parasympathetic state of calm. And the vibration itself actually helps to exchange carbon dioxide and oxygen in your blood cells, increases nitric oxide to dilate your vessels. There are huge metabolic benefits to singing in addition to toning the muscles of your tongue and your throat. Now, why don't we sing as much as we used to? It used to be in school, you would sing. You'd get together with people. I remember as a teenager, we'd have a fire. We'd all sit around the fire and sing. And then a few years ago, they started doing computer synthesized auto-tune type of techniques. So now they created this perfected model of singing that nobody can really achieve. They created this image in children's minds that you looked a certain way, you sounded a certain way, and anything outside of that, they feel self-conscious about, right? We have to encourage children to use their voice with varying pitch. That's basically what it is. You take your voice, you vary the pitch up and down, and that is called singing. But in addition to that, it actually, music and singing completely elevates your mood.
Yeah.
It has so many benefits emotionally that it's really sad to me that the schools have kind of taken it out as if it was inconsequential. It needs to be brought back with your parents, with your children in the car. Turn off the radio, sing a song with your kids, all those stupid little songs that the kids love. You can see the joy that it brings them. And if there's one thing that we all need a lot more of is joy in our life.
100%.
And a simple way to do that is just to sing your head off and not care how you sound. So you're spot on. And the thing, Tarun, they found that when people actually are in the depths of Alzheimer's, they still remember their music. They still remember their songs. And Parkinson's patients with their little shuffling gait, you put on the music that they know, and all of a sudden they can walk and dance.
Yep.
So there's a lot we still haven't learned about music. There is sound therapy where a child who's autistic, profoundly autistic, cannot make eye contact. 20 minutes a day, a frequency, a vibration played, all of a sudden now they're functioning at grade level with their colleagues. Like there's a lot that we still need to understand about the role that our senses and our cranial nerves play in overall health.
Well, I think that as we're wrapping up here, Julia, and I don't want to wrap up at all, but I think that when the world comes around to it, we need to do a long retreat. And I think that retreat should be called Sound Asleep or something like, Good Night in the Key of Sleep, right?
Oh, wow.
And the charm of this retreat will be that you're not going there to do. You're not going there to get 16,000 more techniques or whatever it is people think they're paying for.
Mm-hmm.
You're actually going there to sing, dance, and sleep. And you'll pay hugely for that privilege.
You can reset your entire sleep in 5 days.
Oh, I love it. Okay, so now we know that we'll party the first day, we'll reset it in 5, and then we'll have gratitude so 1 week. I just think that honestly, I would be very excited about going to a seminar or retreat where I was given permission to sleep. And not only permission, but I was supported in that through, we're going to sing. And yes, I grew up around campfires and learning to play 3-chord guitars, and that's what we did. And friends would come over and we would sing and do music. And I just don't see it anymore. So this has been really, really true. We entitled this episode kind of tongue-in-cheek, Rest in Peace. Because Steve and I were talking about it, and I said, well, why should people be resting in peace one day? I want to rest in peace now, like today. Okay, universe, don't take that literally. But, I want to rest in peace now. And why not? Because, every time we close our eyes, it's a mini death, isn't it, in a sense? Because we're like dying to the world, right? And each
dying
day
to the past and being reborn to the new.
That's right. And so in a sense, when they say it's a new day and it's a fresh start, I know that when I've given myself the sleep that I so want and hopefully that I so deserve. So How to Take Back Your Sleep was our subtitle. And I really feel that you have this is going to be one of those episodes that I don't know about you, but I'm going to be listening to it a few times because there's so much that's stimulated. Yeah, Steve?
I just want to say something because I think you said something so profound there, Julia, because I think a lot of times why people don't do something about their problem, their health issue, whatever it is, and especially with sleep, especially if they've struggled with it for years, there's this misconception out there that if I've struggled with it for years, then it's going to take a long, long time to reset my sleep. And you just said there, you can reset your sleep in 5 days. And I said, that in itself is a phenomenal selling wellness retreat within the hospitality, world, where I've been working for years with wellness programs and stuff. For people to have that realization that they could reset their sleep in 5 days. Wow. I think that's so, so powerful. Takeaway.
And I think if you are somebody who is highly driven, not to take away from that at all. I'm a highly driven person. I know, and I have sacrificed sleep at times in the pursuit of my goals. So not saying it in any way to disparage that drive. What I'm saying is then give yourself the opportunity to reset. Don't be like a mouse on a treadmill that never gets off, because that will kill you. But if you're doing that, recognize your body. And to me, that's what a vacation should be. Some people say they need a vacation from their vacation.
That's right.
Okay, well, what was the point of that then, right? Reset, rebalance so that you can get back to living the full life you want to live. So that's where I see that people too think there's no hope for them.
So there's another, I believe, interpretation of what we call the Great Reset.
Right.
Okay. When we take time out, one of my definitions in my meditation courses is meditation is taking time out to take time in. And if we can start to master that in conjunction with whatever our hopes and dreams and aspirations are for ourselves, for our families, our relations, our business, our purpose, I think that's a path to true mastery. So let's give sleep a chance. And I so appreciate this discussion. I think we're going to get a lot of wonderful feedbacks and probably way more questions than anything we've answered today. It's one of those topics.
Yeah.
And we're going to encourage people to reach out to you so they can start to really improve their quality of their lives, because it is available. And it doesn't have to be, like Steve says, you don't have to be so fearful or feel that it's so insurmountable. So we can have that healing be given to us by, I think, one of the most beautiful gifts that we've been given by the Creator is the gift of sleep. And
Absolutely.
On that note, I think it's nap time. So sorry, guys, but I have more important things to do. But thank you so much. And please come back and talk to us more.
Thank
Thank
you,
you
Julia.
so much. Thank you for having me, you guys.
Om Shanti. And
Pleasure.
have a good sleep tonight, everyone.
Good night.
We trust you found practical value in this podcast and will enthusiastically share it with others in your circle. And if you are so moved, leave us a review or write a post on social, tagging #ChaiChatPodcast, and we will show our appreciation. Promise. Tarun Puri and Steve Harvey welcome you to join us for a Chai Chat at all of our live events and more. Connect with us with your questions, topic suggestions, and reviews at info@chaichatpodcast.com.